Happy Saturday night. I guess it's not a happy Saturday night if you're a Purdue fan, as the Boilermakers lose to Northwestern and first loss of the season. But this is our Saturday simulcast brought to you by the Purdue Union Club Hotel. And they had a watch party again tonight for the home game. We appreciate their business. And also, stay tuned for some special promotions also on goldenblack.com. But good time to subscribe as we get into the holidays. And this is part of what you get as a subscriber and a viewer of Gold and Black. And we appreciate all of your attention and interest in that. So we're going to start with you, Tom. Just some overall impressions. Obviously, Northwestern really, in a lot of ways, seemed to have its way with Purdue, but it was a competitive game. And to Purdue's credit, the Boilermakers came back and made some plays to make this a one-possession game. But your overall impressions?
Yeah, disappointment, guys. The opportunity that was there tonight for Purdue, we all knew it. Arguably the biggest game in Ross-Ade Stadium from a standings standpoint since 2007. You have Northwestern on your home field. You're 2-0. You got some momentum. You had 2 weeks to prepare. And again, the offense guys really struggled tonight. Not a total shock to see Purdue have issues running the football, but to the degree with which they had struggles surprised, I think, everybody, guys. 17 carries, I think, for 2 yards. They got manhandled up front. Let's not try to sugarcoat it. And this is a Purdue offensive line a lot of us thought had made some strides the first 2 weeks. But boy, guys, everything looked like it was undone tonight when they got no ground game established. That put Aiden O'Connell in a compromised situation as well, guys. He struggled, was sacked a few times as well. And then, of course, we can talk about just Purdue's inability to make chunk plays that they needed to make tonight to win this game. You're not going to have 10, 11, and 12-play drives to beat this defense of Northwestern's. You're going to need some 20 and 30-yard plays. Northwestern's defense makes that difficult, guys, but also the lack of playmakers for Purdue is really focused and exasperating when you don't have Rondale Moore on the field. And we saw that manifest itself tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to the Rondale Moore topic a little bit later. But Brian, David Bell's really good. He still had, 9 catches or whatever it was, 9 catches for 78 yards or whatever it ended up being. I thought Northwestern was, and I tend to really look at Pat Fitzgerald and say this guy's an excellent football coach. Their defense is very good, very experienced. The Northwestern's experienced offensive line was a difference. Peyton Ramsey was a difference. You have to give Northwestern some credit here, Brian, I think, also for coming in and just really taking care of business, even though it was a one-score game.
Yeah, I think I wrote my blog about this. I think the story is that Northwestern was better. I think Northwestern outplayed Purdue at the line of scrimmage from a defensive perspective, and that's something Purdue had done a pretty good job with. Its offensive line, its overall offensive operation had done a pretty good job at the line of scrimmage. Not tonight. They got outplayed today. I thought Northwestern's corners, albeit a little bit grabby at times, I thought their corners did an excellent job kind of taking away Purdue's strengths. The weather couldn't have helped. I don't think that was all that big of a deal watching from afar, but I think Purdue has to be able to throw the ball up the field, to have a good offense. The way it's built right now and the way it'll probably be built as long as Jeff Brom is here, they've got to be able to throw the ball up the field, and they were not able to do that. Tonight, you have to give a lot of credit to Northwestern for that, but I didn't think Aiden O'Connell looked right, whether that was injury, whether that was weather, whether that was Northwestern's defense. I don't know, probably a combination of all of them. He looked a little indecisive to me. He looked a little bit less accurate to me. And that was just part of Purdue's offensive struggles here, but they just weren't able to get enough offense. That being said, you have the ball in your hands twice in the fourth quarter in the last few minutes with a chance to tie the game. Can't get anything going. You had your opportunities here. You just weren't able to take advantage of them. I think it started more than anything at the line of scrimmage. In terms of the running game, really would have been nice for Purdue to be able to run the ball, but I think everything's interconnected here. I think you've got to be able to pass the ball to set up the run. I think this is a big pass to set up the run sort of situation for Purdue this year. I think Purdue's got to be creative in the running game. It's got to be misdirection based. You can't just stuff it up the middle. with these really young offensive linemen out there who had been playing well the first two games, but I thought took a little bit of a step backward today. But Purdue just wasn't able to get a whole lot done offensively. And, that's obviously something they're lamenting right now and will tomorrow when they watch film and all that.
Yeah, you look at what is, and you could argue, Tom, that Xander Horvath's 98 yards in receiving or whatever he had there near the century mark was a little bit of the run game in some ways. So he made some tremendous hustle plays. Even the games, a couple of plays he made running the football, the 1 6-yard gain was as tough a run as I've seen in a while at Purdue. But yeah, you got to find a way to spread the wealth. They really did. Northwestern did an excellent job of Milton Wright, with the exception of the one touchdown reception. And I don't know, it was maybe Aiden O'Connell, if he was dinged up a little bit, which Brom admitted to, was looking towards safe spot, and that was David Bell. Maybe too many times. I don't know. Again, it's hard to know without evaluating the film. But again, all against a good defense, just not enough to make this a game that you could win.
Yeah, I mean, who blames O'Connell for looking to number 3, right? I mean, David Bell's sensational. How many times did he bail out O'Connell with some spectacular catches against Iowa and Illinois? Tonight, guys, David Bell was targeted 17 times. Aiden O'Connell threw it 51 times. Bell finished with a modest, like you said, Alan, 9 catches for 78 yards. Purdue's long pass play was the Garrett Miller 40-yard touchdown, John. Really, guys, that was a short pass where he slipped out and ran about the last 30 yards on his own. Very nice play, guys. By the way, I'd like to see Garrett Miller get the ball a heck of a lot more often. And not to get off on a tangent here, but I really thought Purdue would get more from its tight ends up to this point. I know Bryson Hopkins left as an all-time great, but again, I thought maybe, especially in this game with Patty Fisher, Blake Gallagher, I wouldn't sure those Northwestern linebackers maybe cover Purdue's tight ends. Why not make them try to cover Payne Durham and Garrett Miller and others more often? But again, I digress. Tough night for the offense. And again, Alan, to your point, here's to Brian about O'Connell and if he was healthy or not. This was Brom's exact quote after the game when I asked him if indeed Aiden was banged up. And Jeff said, quote, a little bit this past week, but I don't want to reveal anything. But he played hard, made some throws for us, and we got to help him out and get the running game called up. So there you go, back to the ground game, which of course we know struggled tonight too. And just a tough night overall for the offense, guys. They've got to regroup. As you said too, Alan, Friday night, Minnesota's a desperate team. They're 1-3. And as Jeff Brom said after the game, guys, you know it too, and listeners know it, Purdue's not had a lot of success going against the Golden Gophers the last decade or so.
It's been 5 years before Brian Neubert was born since Purdue's beaten Minnesota outdoors, if you want to know the truth. 1972 last time.
At Minnesota. They've beaten Purdue. They've beaten them plenty of times in West Lafayette.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about up in Minnesota. That's right. And so let's go to the Rondale Moore.
That's kind of a weird stat because they don't play outdoors.
Well, they hadn't for a long time, from 1982 to 2007 or 8. So it's a kangaroo statistic. But look at, Rondale Moore is certainly a we're putting kangaroos in this. It's late on Saturday night. But
I'm exhausted.
Rondale Moore is obviously becoming a topic. It's been a topic. I mean, it's nothing new. But it's become interesting only that, we're kind of tired of hearing about it, I suppose, because we're dealing with it from that standpoint. But it's now almost to the point where he's going to – and Jeff Brom did say that he expects him to play at some point in time soon. But now it is almost like, Brian, maybe he's going to have to play just to get this kind of monkey off his back, so to speak, in terms of the injury. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the position they're in. It's been acknowledged it's an injury. It's something that occurred in preseason camp that's kind of, I don't know if it's lingered or if it's created some apprehension on Rondale Moore. I'm not going to judge a guy who isn't, all that eager to play at what he feels to be less than 100%. But You know, no one's guaranteed tomorrow here with this season.
Yeah.
And, you know, how many games are left? 4, 5?
There's 4 scheduled, plus
4, and then
the
the crossover game.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
5 more games, 4 of which, you know, matter in the Big Ten West standings. Every week, the one thing you didn't want to do this year was hurt yourself from an NFL stock perspective. And
right.
You don't want to go out there at less than 100%. You sure as hell don't want to go out there and get hurt again. And if you have any concern that that's going to happen, that would be mortifying in the position he's in. But at the same time, you opted back in. It's been a month now. It's been 3 games. It's been a month. And what do you think the NFL's first question is going to be in the spring? You know?
Yeah.
The reason that I don't think this has been a very public deal is that I think people are being sensitive to the fact that you don't want to create a stigma around a kid after he missed so much time last year with a hamstring injury. You don't want him to get that reputation as, you know, fragile. But what do you think the NFL's first question is going to be in the spring after he, you know, sat out the first month of the season? It's a tough situation to be in here. I understand fans' frustration, not only with the player not being available, but with the vague public approach to it, which I'm sure has noble reasoning behind it. But it's a frustrating situation for everybody involved. And I'm sure Rondale Moore wants to play. If he didn't want to play, he wouldn't be here. I mean, that it's as simple as that. He wouldn't be physically present at Purdue. He didn't have to come back at all. He obviously wants to play. Everything I understood during the week was that, you know, he was participating in practice to some extent with the intent of playing, with the hope to play, that he's wanted to play. And the fact it just hasn't happened yet is casting a little bit of a pall over Purdue's season. At the end of the day, Purdue is still, you know, 2-1 and still doing okay here, but it feels like this loss has been reacted to very strongly from fans so far. And I think a big part of that is the frustration that you were so excited to get this generational talent back on your team, this legitimate star back on your team. And the fact you haven't seen him yet was just, that frustration was going to boil over as soon as they lost a game. And, you know, I didn't think his absence mattered all that much the first 2 games. Purdue won both of those games, obviously, but tonight I think it really mattered. You know, from an offensive balance perspective, we talked about throwing the ball to tight end more. Purdue did throw the ball to tight end a couple of times, took a deep shot to Payne Durham, got held, didn't get called, threw the ball to him in the red zone, didn't connect. They need some balance. And what better balance could there be than to put another All-American on the other side of David Bell? I mean, that would have been an absolute game changer tonight. You cannot hold the shirt of the player you cannot catch. So that would have been a big deal tonight. And I understand the frustration around this. It's just kind of a weird, unconventional, sort of unprecedented situation.
Tom, the only way maybe is that he gets back on the field and does something. And yet, and you're right, the season is dwindling. You know, by definition, only started with 8 regular season plus 1. We know Rondale Moore's a hard-nosed kid. He can take hits. We've watched him do it at the highest level in 2018, and even in 19, when it was pretty well documented that he wanted to be back on that field at that point. So it's a very interesting. It's almost a story for 2020 in terms of how crazy all this has been.
Yeah, you're right. And Jeff Brom did say after the game, guys, he did think Rondale will play again this year. You know, he says he's not going to put someone on the field before they're ready to play. So, again, he says as soon as Moore is fully healthy and ready to go, he'll be on the field. And I think to your guys' point about tonight in a 7-point game, there's no doubt about it. Rondale Moore would have made a difference. May have been a difference in a Boilermaker victory tonight. And I can sense the fans' frustrations. I think we all could. This has been building for weeks, it seems like. You know, taking part in the post-game press conference, when Jeff was asked questions about Rondale, you can kind of sense some frustration on his part as well. So I think Brian laid out the background to what we know as well as he could. I don't think there's many people outside those football offices that probably know it as well. So, again, big game Saturday, guys. And, And, while we've been talking about the offense, maybe let's talk just a little bit about the Purdue defense. I know they struggled in Champaign on Halloween. I thought by and large, they played pretty well tonight, gave up less than 300 yards of total offense. Northwestern ran 40 times for 80 yards. Yes, Peyton Ramsey made some big throws, but Brian talked about it too. That defense got Purdue's offense the ball a couple times late with the chance to do something, and the offense was unable to do it. So again, defensively, I thought without George Karlaftis, which we haven't even talked about, without number 5, I thought by and large the defense, I thought acquitted itself pretty well tonight.
Yeah, I thought Lorenzo Neal made a couple of plays early, and I mean,
what the hell was
late.
that on the? I'm sorry to interrupt. The offsides on the 4th and 2 early. What the hell was that? I don't know what the rule is, but Lorenzo Neal jumped offside. It's within his rights to get back onside before the ball is snapped, which he could have done. But as he was in the neutral zone, the Northwestern guy reached up and smacked his helmet. That was the contact.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't know. And Jeff Brom, I know you asked him that in post game, and it'll be interesting to see if Brom has a comment about that a little bit later, because I didn't have access to watching it on TV from where I was sitting in the press box. But yeah,
I'm not saying it was the wrong call, but I don't know what the rule is. But
yeah,
if the defensive player hasn't committed a penalty yet, and the offensive player comes out of his stance to smack him on the helmet, isn't that a false start? I mean,
Here's a better solution, Brian. Don't jump.
Yeah.
Right, but the rules are the rules. I can't find anything in the rule book that says what happens when the offensive lineman slaps the defensive lineman on the helmet. I've never seen that before. I'm just curious. I'm not saying it was the wrong call. I don't know. I don't know what the rule is.
Yeah, strange deal. And but I did think Lorenzo Neal certainly showed up and gave Purdue a chance with a couple PBUs or passes defended late in the game.
How good are Derek Barnes and DeMarcus Mitchell, guys?
Yeah,
you were really good tonight.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, Barnes, but had 14 tackles and he was all over the place.
Looked like Ray Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, it does give them hope, and I guess that gets me to my next point is next week's game, and I've been kind of beating this drum, maybe because it's how I feel personally about COVID and all this and what we're all dealing with. But it seems to me you're going to have to find motivation, and Purdue's going to have to keep that motivation. And they still have a lot to play for, and they're not completely out of the race in their division yet, though that might be a little bit wishful thinking. Some Northwestern would have to lose twice, and Wisconsin's going to have to lose. But my point is that you got to go up to Minnesota. Minnesota was awful last night in a lot of ways. Statistically, they weren't. They played Iowa pretty dead even, but they got thumped and kind of looked like they weren't all that interested in the second half. Is that as simple as what it's going to come down to at the end? Does Purdue just have to keep its focus and go to a place that it hasn't won in a long time? Certainly hasn't won at TCF Bank Stadium, but is that how you view it? Because it is a big game for Purdue if you really want to have a season where you look at the end of the season that you've done something positive.
Who are you talking to?
I'm asking. I'll ask Tom that question.
I mean, you wonder. You see Penn State.
I don't know who I'm talking to, but go ahead.
You see Penn State's 0-4. What's their motivation? You don't even have to have a win threshold to go to a bowl game this year. So what's the motivation to win games if you can still go to a bowl? I think Purdue. If you're Purdue, you still want to try to finish over 500, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And when you're still 2-1 for crying out loud. I mean, there's no reason to lack motivation going to the Twin Cities. You were embarrassed the last time you were up there. You were embarrassed last year in Ross-Ade Stadium by this team. They've lost 5 times in a row up there. So there's plenty of motivation to beat this team, I think, if you're Purdue. And there's still plenty to play for. You want to try to finish on the plus side of 500 if you're the Boilermakers, because you haven't done it since Brom's first year. But again, speaking of motivation, what's Minnesota's going to be? So
yeah, that's my question.
If you're Purdue, you hope maybe they're going to start to fold their tent a little bit. We shall see. As you said when we started this broadcast, Alan, the bloom is off. I think that this season so far, at least probably for the hopes of winning the division, but I still think there's plenty to play for. And if you're Purdue, you have to try to stay on track, and that's going to be one of one of the tasks of this coaching staff, making sure everybody continues to stay bought into this thing.
Well, and Brian, the simple fact of last year, even though there were a lot of reasons for that 4-8 record, you do want to finish. I think you do want to finish the season, whatever that looks like, with saying you can point to it and say we made improvement this year, and this program is headed in the right direction. Which there certainly are signs of that, but. And I'm not overplaying a loss to a team that really looks like it's pretty good, Northwestern. But my point is, that's why these games really are going to matter for Purdue down the stretch.
Yeah. One other point to make about that last question is, we talk about Purdue going to Minnesota. There's no such thing as home field advantage this year. I mean, that is plainly evident. You saw what Iowa did at Minnesota yesterday. Maryland won at Penn State. Everyone's winning at Michigan these days. There's no such thing as home field advantage. And I think that's a big deal when you talk about like Purdue going up to Minnesota and what's going to happen, things like that.
Unless it's 10 degrees.
It's going to be
true.
30. They said early prediction is high 20s, but that's early. But go ahead.
Minnesota might be the one exception to that rule. You are correct. Back to Purdue. At the end of the day, you are a better football team now than you were last year. You just lost by a touchdown to an unbeaten top 25 team with two stars standing on the sideline in George Karlaftis and Rondale Moore. It's going to be okay. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. This is a big game. The Rondale Moore undercurrent to this, I think, has added a level of frustration boiling over among fans. But I think that, Purdue's fine here. When you look at the way the Big Ten has kind of shaken out this year, I think the league is upside down. There isn't anything that you're really afraid of moving forward. That being said, there's nothing you can take for granted moving forward. But like I said before, too, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. There might not even be a game next weekend for all we know. Yeah. I think, Purdue stacks up well with Minnesota. I think they stack up okay with everybody left on their schedule. I think your two toughest games are behind you. Wisconsin didn't happen. Obviously, Northwestern got away. Purdue's 2-1. Purdue's still – got David Bell, still has, a defense that is doing okay. George Karlaftis will be back. Rondale Moore at some point presumably will play, and you have a chance to be okay here. So I think, kind of keeping all that stuff in mind in the context of this disappointing loss to Northwestern, I think is probably important.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and we'll see what happened. And on that note, we're going to try to – there is hope. Brian did say the sun's coming up tomorrow, which I don't know if it's going to in West Lafayette. It's going to be a nasty day in West Lafayette tomorrow, as I understand. But tomorrow being Sunday, most of you will be watching this on Sunday. But we want to thank Tom and Brian. And I know your work's not completely done for this Saturday night, but our Saturday night simulcast – we will be it's going to be a short week next week as Purdue and Minnesota teed up at 7:30 Eastern on Friday night. And that will present its own challenge for the coaching staff to get ready, but that will be part of the deal as well. I want to thank our sponsor also, the Purdue Union Club Hotel. And a reminder that you can subscribe to goldenblack.com. We've got some specials on the site. Great holiday gift. Make sure that you give that some thought. And we appreciate all of you for watching and listening and visiting the site as often as possible. And we'll look forward to next Saturday's simulcast, which we'll do after the game, but maybe it'll be Saturday morning. I know it's going to be a late night next week, but we'll have it for you on goldenblack.com. Have a great week, everybody.